at UCF's official podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Fernando.
And I'm Brian. On today's episode, we have Miss Halle Fields. She is a software developer for the Federal Reserve, and she has been there for the last 2 years. Welcome to the show, Halle.
Hi, thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me onto the show. This is awesome.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here.
I think
go
just...
ahead.
Oh, no, you're all good. I think just right out the gate, you started out in chemistry, right? And obviously you made that choice. It's a big commitment to make. And now you seem to be doing really great in your field. I mean, what was it like having that transition?
Yeah, so I grew up in an area that they were starting to sort of get a STEM focus in schools. You know, we had some really dedicated science teachers in the schools that I went to that were really interested in life sciences. And, we went through high school and we didn't really have any sort of coding programs or robotics or engineering or anything. That wasn't anything that our school system really dealt with. And so, they offered a pretty standard set of like biology, chemistry, physics classes. And I really enjoyed my chemistry classes in college. And I hadn't even begun to consider majors outside of like I didn't even consider doing like an engineering degree when I was applying to college. I was just like, I need to pick a major that I like in school right now. So I'm going to be a chemistry major. That was about as much thought went into it, And the first year of college was an interesting one. You get to college and there are so many things, I'm sure you guys know, you're sort of going through it right now. There's so many things that you're told to expect from college and you get there and they don't happen. There are things that you aren't told to expect and you're punched in the face with them, and then there are things that you totally expect, you totally heard about, and they happen and you're like, all right, I'm ready for this. But chemistry was something that I came into college with a passion for. And, the first year of college, I just I fell out of love with it, the classes I was taking, I just didn't really gel with the program so much. And when I started taking coding classes at I was like, oh, maybe I'll add a minor or add a second major. And then just transitioned full on computer science at the end of my freshman year.
That makes sense. Did you, did you have any reservations before making that move?
Yeah, a lot of us sort of get our heart set on something, you imagine a whole life path, or at least I did. I went to college, I'm like, I'm going to be a chemistry major. I'm going to love chemistry so much, and I'm going to graduate, and I'm going to do research, and I'm going to, love the ocean or something. I don't know. But, you picture in your head. You don't go to college and you're like, I'll be a chemistry major and I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I just, I'm going to college. I had sort of ideas planned for what I wanted to do with it. And so it's hard to let go of the ideals that you have planned for yourself. But it's also like if you find yourself falling in love with something else, which for me was, programming, computer science, things like that, you just kind of have to go for it, especially if you feel more comfortable in that environment, which was something that was huge for me.
Oh, yeah. I think, being able to make that call, because sometimes when you get stuck in that, when you start that position, getting into chemistry or whatever, anybody out there listening might be in somewhat of a major, and having that same feeling, it seems really intimidating, like, oh, you have these ideas, you have this concept, you came into here. And I think a little bit of, I wouldn't call it a lie per se, but a little misleading term is when we first get to college, we're kind of told to like, this is what you're doing. You need to know what you're going to do with your life. You got to figure this out. You got to be on this path. You got to, get a job and the whole 9 yards. And I think it's incredible that you were able to recognize that within yourself and be like, you know what, like, chemistry might have been for me, but computer science that's what I want. This is what I need in my life.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people think you go to college, you pick your major, that's it. And for a lot of people, that's not it. I knew people that changed their major 2, 3, 4 times. They added minors, they dropped minors, they added majors, they dropped majors, and you come into college a different person and a completely different person than you come out, And you don't have to come into college with an idea of who you're going to be and stick to that the whole time. I mean, that's putting yourself in a box, and that's unfair to you and who you're supposed to be at the end of it, you know? So,
I completely agree.
So at what point do you know, like, this is what I want to do? Because switching majors, it's not something like you do. I'm going to switch my major, you know? It's a really hard decision. You got to talk to yourself, your family, and just your friends to get more feedback on it.
Yeah, especially it's interesting you bring up, you know, you have to talk to your family about it, because my parents, you know, in high school and, you know, middle school and stuff, because I grew up a musician. And so, you know, I do the little kid thing where you sort of like romanticize what you love doing as a kid, where I was like, I'm going to grow up to be a professional piano player. Like I'm going to play in New York City and I'm going to go to Juilliard, you know, all that crazy stuff. And my parents were immediately like, no, you'll never make any money. Which isn't the correct, that's not the correct response. Mm-hmm. But when I told them, you know, I was like, I actually really love chemistry, you know, they also got their heart set on chemistry, and they're like, you could do pharmacy, or you could do, you know, X, Y, and Z. So man, like the day I had to come home and explain to my dad what a computer science major is, he was like, is it like a business major? Like, are you going to be like a manager? Like, are you going to work at like Geek Squad? I'm like, no, Dad. No, Dad. Like, calm down. I have this figured out for me. But so it was actually, it was a bit of a transition for me, because the end of freshman year, you know, I had taken my first programming class at UM, and I really loved it. I loved the faculty. I felt like it was such a supportive environment, and like the people there felt more like my people than the people did in sort of like the life sciences program that I was in. And so I went in and I added computer science as a second major. So like kind of like a non-committal sort of jump into like, okay, I like computer science, I'll add it, but I'm not getting rid of chemistry yet. And then towards the end of my freshman year, I was like, you know what, I need to find something to do over the summer. I don't want to sit at home all summer. I don't want to like go back to my high school job, you know, things like that. I was like, I need to find, maybe I can get an internship, who knows? And I was actually so lucky, because I think I was looking in like April. So this is way past what we now know in the computer science realm is like when you should be applying for internships, right? You know, you're supposed to be applying to internships in like August, like you're supposed to have a phone interview with Google in the beginning of September, or else you'll never make it, you know? So I was looking at like April. I was such a freshman when it came to, you know, I was like, what's an internship? I'll apply. Except I knew I wanted to be near home, and I just got very lucky in that there was an opening at Mote Marine Laboratory in Sarasota, Florida. And they have a lab at Mote Marine, and it was their ocean technology lab. And I applied, I sent in my resume, you know, I had to write like a couple of like short essays. And I think my real appeal there was I was like, I'm a double major in chemistry and computer science. So like, what better for your ocean technology lab? Like, pick me, sort of thing. And it worked somehow. And they picked me, and I remember I was like terrified walking in on my first day. I'm like, they don't know that I know nothing. But I think like when you ask, to get back to the question that you asked, when was your sort of defining moment? Like, when did you think like, oh, like chemistry isn't it anymore? It's really, I'm hunkering down on computer science. Was that summer when I came in with the intention of leveraging both of my majors. And I came out loving computer science so much more, and thinking, like, with a computer science major, I can do anything. I don't like awesome. With the chemistry major, it's so very life science focused, and I'm sure you can do so many things with the chemistry major. There's so many life skills that you learn from, you know, having that sort of dedication to a life science. It's not easy stuff, absolutely. But, you know, if I could use my computer science major and I can work in a lab with chemistry majors, you know, I could do anything under the sun. And I mean, that works for me right now. I don't know jack about economics, let me tell you. Like, I don't know if I should be working at the Federal Reserve. That's a joke. But But being a computer science major, you know, I get to work in fascinating environments and learn things that I never thought I would learn or be involved in. And it's awesome. And that's sort of like, that's how you can leverage technology. You can use it anywhere.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the same reason why not the same reason, obviously you have a lot more of an interesting backstory to everything that you chose. But part of the reason why I chose electrical is that same thing. You know, in the field of technology, you're able to work with so many different fields. You're able to, you know, dip your feet into a lot of different ponds, and it leads to a lot of great opportunities. But I want to get back to the Mote technology, or the, oh my goodness, don't correct me yet, Mote Ocean Technology Club.
There it is.
There it is. The Mote Ocean Technology Club was I assume your first publication that you've had was through them?
Yeah, my only publication.
Only publication.
Oh.
And my first. I guess I won't cut myself off there. But yeah, so the publication actually, I won't say it was an accident. It certainly wasn't an accident, but I didn't know it was happening until it happened, you know? So I did my internship that summer, and the goal of my internship, just to sort of fill you in, was I was supposed to come in and I was building a remote sensor suite to be used underwater in collaboration with some other labs. So like there's a fisheries lab at Mote that we were going to hook up the sensors to like their fishery. They sort of have like a web of sensors to detect like fish travel patterns in the Sarasota Bay. And so my sensors were going to accompany his like ground floor sensors to get other sorts of like environmental factors. So the sensors that I got were supposed to be easily buildable by anybody. So I used Arduino, I used, you know, UV sensors, temperature, you name it. And I sort of like built a housing around the sensors and put in like a Wi-Fi chip and things like that, and then had to put it underwater. That was the hardest part.
Wow.
Sounds
and
scary.
yeah, and it was certainly scary for somebody that had taken programming 1, never taken any electrical engineering, anything. Man, the first time I had to like plug like wires into things. Oh, and it was solar powered. Oh my God, that scared me. That scared the life out of me. I was like, you mean I have to plug in this big solar panel to like this little tiny, little like, I forget what it's called now, but.
Just a microcontroller.
Yeah. Literally, it was terrifying. But
so much.
so cool. And they trusted me with that. They shouldn't have, and they did. And so it was just an awesome experience. And the thing that ended up leading to the publication was it was an awesome experience for me to be able to learn, but also the point of it was that anyone should be able to do it, which is why we used all like open source technology, Arduino, you know, things that are very affordable. And the sensors were the product, but then like the assignment that came with it was also to build a curriculum for high school students. And that was sort of like the Ocean Technology Club. And kids were supposed to be able to come and follow my instructions and download my code and be able to build their own version of the sensors that they could then go and put theirs underwater and get their readings and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it was a program that Mote was just starting up and getting off the ground, and they wanted me to sort of build the curriculum for that. And so really just so many awesome opportunities. The same lab, they have these like big underwater, they almost look like missiles, but they go up and down in the water column and they get different readings. And we were in charge of like maintaining those big missile sensors. And we had to go out on a boat, like at least a couple times a month, like way out into the ocean on this boat and deploy things. And not a lot of people get to say that you can go boating during your internship.
Oh yeah, that's
like
incredible.
I went kayaking a couple of times to like go collect samples. It's just awesome. Highly recommend Mote.
Just something you mentioned earlier. Definitely, it was definitely in their best interest, in your best interest to hire you. Do not second guess yourself.
No, I joke about it now, but they got a lot of work out of me, and I worked like a dog for them, and it was worth every second because I mean that really got my foot through the door. You know, not a lot of people will take on a freshman in college to do work, but I mean, I was scrappy back then. And so I really got stuff done. But the actual Ocean Technology Club was the thing that prompted the publication. So, you know, I went back to college that year, my sophomore year, and, you know, they were starting rounds of the club while I was away. You know, they like not FaceTime, but they did some kind of like, they Zoomed me in a couple of times back before Zoom was as popular as it is now, where like they kind of put my face on a big screen and I talked to the kids and walked them through my code and stuff. But I think
That's awesome.
over a year later after that, I think I was in my junior year of college, I got an email from my old, the guy who ran the lab, Dr. Jordan Beckler. He sent me an email, and it was me and like other people that worked in the lab with us. And he was like, hey, FYI, I've attached a copy of this publication that I wrote about Halle's Ocean Technology Club. So just like review this, and I'm submitting it to the journal in like a couple of weeks. I was like,
ooh.
I was like, okay. So, you know, I opened it up. I, you know, made a couple revisions just to say that I did. And then a couple weeks later, he was like, yeah, our article was accepted by the journal. Cool, you did it. That was that. It really was.
Oh, that's
it was awesome. It really was awesome.
Oh yeah. And
no, it sounds. I'll go ahead.
No, go for it. I've talked a lot. Just go for it.
No, it's really awesome to hear, because I know when I was a freshman, I did nothing, just do my homework, watch TV. It really sounds like you grew a lot from your internship. Do you have a mentor to teach you, or would you just on your own, just doing research, trying to learn code, recollect what you learned from first class?
Yeah, so I did have a mentor while I was there. He was an electrical engineer. So he couldn't, not that he couldn't, he didn't know a whole lot of coding. And you know, he knew a little bit, but that wasn't really his job in mentoring me. It was mostly like helping me, like he'd go into the back room and like find an old solar panel and be like, let's hook this up, you know, that sort of thing. Or, you know, we'd walk down to the water and we'd be like talking about designs for like the casing for the sensor suite, and he'd be like, how can we keep this waterproof while also like staying connected? We had to have like a Wi-Fi hotspot embedded near it so it could transmit data via Wi-Fi back to our like sort of like information center where it got processed and sent out to like all of our data collectors. So things like that, like he was really good for helping design things and having a little more like foresight than I did at that age and that level of experience. And he was just an awesome guy to have around, you know, just for like life experience, like a very well-rounded mentorship. In terms of like coding, again, I had taken programming 1 at UM, so my experience there was actually very basic. It's funny, I was working on a different project recently, and I was using my GitHub, and I was scrolling down through my old GitHub, and I found my old code, and I was like, oh my, should I look at this? You know, like how baby is this gonna be? I took a look at a couple lines, and, you know, I was actually surprised. I was like, there's a lot of for loops, but you did what you could. And yeah, but just a very awesome mentor. But in terms of the coding and stuff, it was a lot of Stack Overflow, Arduino forums, trying to just figure out what I'm doing. Because unless you're really familiar with Arduino and its language and how to integrate its different sensors and stuff, not that no amount of coding knowledge could help you, because I mean, it is a coding language just like anything else, and it's based on very common coding languages, but you still need to know the ins and outs of the language itself, and Stack Overflow is always there for you.
Oh yeah. I would say that's one really great thing about working in the field of technology is there's a lot of information on the technology available for us.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big thing sort of in the general software developer space. When I first came in, I'm sure you guys have heard of the term like Imposter Syndrome. You know, you come in and you think everybody around you knows so much more than you, and you're so far behind, and like, I'm just this baby, I'm new here, I don't know anything. But very quickly you realize, like, yeah, people have years of experience on you. There's a reason why there are senior developers and junior developers, but everybody is Googling it. Everybody. Like, when I like send my mentors or like my teammates a question on like my work computer, I'm like, oh, hey, I can't figure this out. I guarantee 99% of the time they will Google it and then come back to me. Everybody does it, regardless of skill level, and that's awesome. It's such an equalizer.
Oh yeah, I mean, you even hear, I think, especially like for our listeners, I assume, especially if you're in college right now, you're taking higher level math classes, but you also sometimes see that calculator for 8 + 5, you know, like that doesn't change that much as you get older.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. You definitely still need a calculator, even if you're really good at math.
So now that you've been working for 2 years, you know, getting your master's in comp sci, is it gone, imposter syndrome, or like, is it like still in the back of your head, like, I'm not good enough?
Oh, no, it's not gone. I don't know if it ever goes away. I'll have to talk to people much older than me, but I imagine if I did a survey, I don't think it goes away. I think everybody, I mean, that's just human nature. Everybody kind of thinks that other people probably know more than them, or they're asking too many questions. I mean, it's human nature to feel not so secure. And I mean, that also, it keeps you humble, and it keeps you constantly trying to learn and do better. Because if you weren't, that wouldn't make you a very good employee, would it?
No, absolutely. You always need a drive to just push you and keep going and going.
Yeah. If you think you know everything, you're not getting better.
Oh yeah.
But back to your chemistry background though, have you ever thought about going back to chemistry? Like throughout your whole process of coding?
Not specifically chemistry. There are times where I think about how much, for example, I loved my time at Mote, and I loved the experience of getting to work in that environment, sort of like the marine science realm. And like, I don't specifically ever think like, oh, I should go back to school and get a chemistry degree. I really miss chemistry. Like, that's not really something I think about, but sometimes I'm like, oh, like maybe I should pursue other things that I know I'm passionate about. Like maybe I should look more into doing marine science because I know I loved that, or, you know, things like that. But there are so many things to love in what you're doing. And, you know, I never thought, like early on in college, I never thought I'd be like, oh, you're going to love working for an economic government agency. But there's so many interesting things about everywhere you go. And, well, like chemistry, I don't think is specifically in my future. I'm not gonna just stop here and be like, I only ever want to know about computers. That's not it.
Oh, I think it's also just important to know. I mean, you dipped your foot into chemistry, you've dipped your foot in computer science, you've talked about being a musician. Like this kind of diversity comes with everybody. And so those pursuing a degree, like just because I'm an electrical engineering undergraduate doesn't mean my entire life has to be circuits. Like,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody has hobbies outside of what they do for a career. If I worked all day doing coding and then turned off my work computer and turned on my personal computer and did more coding,
go crazy.
That hurts my brain to think about. Don't. I'm sorry if you can hear all my emails coming in. It's way too late for that.
Oh,
it's all good.
Yeah.
My computer on mute.
And on that note, I mean, like you said, you didn't realize how much fun you would have in like an economics based company. But, you know, everybody working there also has their own hobbies. They have their, like, they're not just people there working only for economics, like the only thing that, don't get me wrong, some people do. In the world, you know, there are some people who will focus on one thing only. And that's actually really admirable. Geez.
We get it. We get it.
But yeah, like, completely lost the train of thought. Fern, take this one.
You really just threw me in there.
Yeah,
No,
I'm
but
pretty
we're all
good.
musicians.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. I didn't know that about you guys.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's
It seems to
awesome.
be surprisingly common for different engineering majors, in my opinion, to have some kind of creative outlet. I think
Yeah.
engineering is creative within itself. That's something that I hope everyone knows at this point, especially before
Yeah.
getting into engineering, realize like you're not going into engineering to just push buttons and move forward. Like engineering is building and growing. And I
Yeah.
think music is the same thing. All these creative fields, like they come together.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Engineering at its core is problem solving.
Yep.
And you can't be solving new problems by following a very set specific formula every time. You do have to think out of the box. I think a lot of people in these sort of fields absolutely have a creative outlet. I mean, I'd like to think a lot of people have a creative outlet in one way, shape, or form, but
Yeah.
especially I've
Oh,
noticed
yeah.
in people that have, STEM backgrounds, they absolutely do have a creative outlet. People like to say it's like left brain, right brain, but I do think it is common. It's very common, and I think it's very good for you to have that sort of outlet.
Oh, yeah. And so what is your creative outlet, Allie?
Well, it depends on my motivation to practice, but
always part of that factor.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But growing up and into now, although more sporadically these days, I am a musician, and I do love. I played piano growing up. That was my primary instrument, and then I joined band in whatever year it was that you could start doing band. I think it was 5th grade. And I played clarinet all the way through, middle school, high school, did marching band, all the jazz. But I got to college, and it was funny. I never really had any doubt in my mind that I wanted to do band in college, because at my core, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a band kid. And I knew that would be de facto way to get to college and have a set group of friends,
Oh yeah.
Like those are people that I can come in and I know them immediately. You show up to college and you guys are going to laugh. Everybody laughs, but you have to do band camp. And
I love band camp. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not
I did
laughing at
band camp.
that.
it is, it's the meme at this point, a very old meme, but a meme nonetheless.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
you do band camp, you get there, you show up to school like 2 weeks before everybody else, you move into the dorm like a week before everybody else, and it's just you and other kids that are doing athletics. So it's all the band kids move into the dorm early, cheerleaders move in, the athletes are probably already there, but they have fancy housing elsewhere. We don't have to deal with them where we are. But you sort of end up meeting them in sort of like this isolated space without sort of like the craziness of the first week of college or anything happening. Like you get dedicated time to do what you love to do and meet new friends, or if you've already been there for years, spend time with your friends, grow new relationships with people that are new, people that are coming and going. And I was going to say, and sweat like hell because it's Florida, but I don't know if that's appropriate for the podcast. You can bleep me out if I...
Worst comes to worst, we have an editor, Jordan.
Yeah. Close to Jordan.
No, but yeah, I mean, those relationships I think is a huge part of band, and something that I've noticed in engineering. Don't get me wrong, it's important to be connected with the people around you. It's really important, especially getting through classes. Having those relationships, having that encouragement from your peers to push you forward. But in engineering, you do have the option to put the blinders down, put the blinders on, focus on what you're doing, and ignore everyone else. In band, you don't have that option. You're playing with people. You're playing with the people around you. They're hearing you play. And if they're wrong, you're wrong. And if I'm wrong, they're wrong. Yeah. And so it's like you build these relationships whether you want to or not.
Yeah, you can't ignore them if you tried.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I tried.
Shout out to all the flautists out there. I am so sorry for that one person intersection.
Hey, you're lucky that I have headphones on right now. My roommate plays the flute.
Ooh.
Nice.
Hey, love flautists. I love them, but flautist, and if you're playing piccolo and you're just slightly out of tune, you're everyone's enemy. I mean, you can't be out of tune when you're playing at such a high register.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good save. Yeah, doing music in college, I mean, sure, it was a huge time suck. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure you guys have, I don't know if any of you are actually in college band or if
I did it.
Huge time suck. Yeah. Huge. Yep. It's a huge commitment. And for some people it's worth it. For some people it's not worth it. You know, respect the grind either way. But for me, it was very much worth it to have a separate life entirely from my major. And, you know, to have those friends and to keep a part of me alive that otherwise I definitely wouldn't have kept up with as much if I didn't, you know. Like, I mean, I saw it in college. You know, I was doing band and I was playing saxophone. But
wow.
Would you like to expand on that?
Not my favorite instrument. Not my favorite one. I was pigeonholed into saxophone. I could have chosen something else, to be fair, to of the saxophonists out there. But
I'm still offended right now.
But my freshman year, I showed up to band camp, and there were 3 clarinet players in the whole band. And the assistant band director sat us down, and he was like, "We're cutting you guys. Nobody will ever hear you. There's no point in like writing music for you guys or giving you drill spots. Like, nobody will ever hear 3 clarinet players. They probably would never hear 10 clarinet players, you know?"
I mean, it's fair. It's not good to hear, but it's fair.
So
it's fair, yeah.
They were like, "Please play something else. Don't quit band." Right?
Oh, that's nice, yeah.
So I did a 1-day stint in percussion. I played cymbals for a day.
Okay.
Oh, I hated it so much.
Oh, yeah.
I don't hate percussion as an entity, as a concept. In high school, I did a percussion ensemble. I played the xylophone or the vibraphone.
Nice.
That one. Mm-hmm. That was fun. That was great. But cymbals, not my jam.
I feel that.
So after a day in drumline, I marched myself right up to the band director's office and I said, "I'm not doing percussion anymore. Put me somewhere else." And so that's how I ended up playing saxophone.
Very nice. Very nice. And I will say, as a percussionist, I did marching bass line for a few years. Cymbals are probably not something I do either. Frankly, it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of effort.
Yeah, it really is.
And I love the effort. I love the time. I love the energy. I love all that. But for me, like sitting on that bass drum, being part of the line where you're dependent on your peers and all that kind of jazz that comes with it, like I agree. Cymbals are great. Not my thing either.
Yeah, I'm glad there are people there that do them. It's just not going to be me.
Oh, yeah.
That's fair. I actually want to ask you guys if you have heard like the incoming change from STEM to STEAM.
Oh, I have heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, I found that really interesting. Like, do you guys personally think, you know, art is as high as, you know, science, technology, engineering, and math? Because there's like a huge argument right now on it.
So I hadn't heard anything about that until, you know, I saw you guys' email come in. And I was like, what is that? And I did some Googling this afternoon because I have all sorts of free time. And I was reading into it, and it does seem very controversial. And I don't know if I know enough about it to have like a super well-rounded opinion. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about it before I start parroting what I read on the internet.
Well, I will say I don't know a whole lot about the controversy. I'm not well versed on this. I don't want to, you know, cause any hate back and forth.
No, of course.
I'd like to think that, because like I said earlier, engineering, math, all this kind of stuff, it's used in a creative way. It's used for like Halle said, it's problem solving. You're trying to figure things out. My mindset of STEM to begin with was more just structured around the technology itself, you know, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. You need all 4 of those things. Like you need all 4 of those things to be able to develop technology. I'd like to think that, you know, not having arts specifically stated in there is not saying it's lesser. You know, STEAM is, I think arts are just as important, but also like, why don't we throw other majors in there, like business? Why don't we throw it? Because I think all the majors have their value in this world. I mean, the whole planet is just this interconnected organism of people doing what they can. And I have no problems with STEAM. I also have no problem with STEM. I think I just, my interpretation when I first got into engineering was STEM was just because all these things have to be together to develop technology.
Personally, I like STEAM, you know. I wouldn't have the same mindset I do now if I never did band. Like in college or in high school, I loved it. Because it's always like that typical, you know, stereotypical engineer that just doesn't shower, just his homework, doesn't talk to anybody, and stay social. And that's what I liked about the arts that I was involved in. Becoming to be more social, see things from like different perspectives, different point of views. And no, I really appreciate it, honestly, that they're not putting anybody down, but instead bringing them up to like that level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you guys make really good points. I think, you know, I'm not sure exactly how I feel about it. I think from one hand, I'm not sure if you look at the acronym, you know, STEM as a whole for like science, technology, engineering, mathematics, whatever. I don't know if arts necessarily, like one of these things is not like the other ones in my head, you know, where I'm like, ooh, like why are we putting that in there? And that's sort of like my off the bat thing. And then my next thought about it is like, well, I think, at least to me, this is my perspective. If somebody knows more about it, feel free to jump in and give me the facts. But I feel like STEM sort of came around as this big push for students to pursue more STEM fields. You know, we grew up in, you know, somewhere around like the middle school, high school time range. Everybody started, you know, shouting STEM at you and hoping that it would stick. You know, I think there was a big push from the American education system to try and get American kids to pursue sort of technology, engineering, science, math fields, because, you know, that is really beneficial to our labor force for, you know, kids to come out as engineers and people that can solve problems and develop vaccines. And, you know, it's really good for America as, you know, a top tier, you know, first world country to have a lot of really capable STEM focused people, you know, that advances us a lot on sort of like the global sphere. And so, you know, when STEM came around trying to build a bunch of engineers and technologists and, you know, people that can solve the world's problems and America's problems, it sort of took a life of its own now. And now STEM isn't just this thing that they're pushing on you because, you know, they want to pop out a bunch of engineers into the workforce. It's become this whole big nationwide thing that everybody knows about, and, you know, curriculums are developed around it, and, you know, there's whole people base their whole life around it. And so, like, the original purpose of STEM, also the arts don't fit in there. If you think about that, you know, people purposefully didn't put arts in that because they weren't looking for people to come out of high school artists.
Yeah.
They were looking for people to come out and, you know, bolster the economy. So from that perspective, I'm also not sure if the arts fit in there. But again, like the points you guys were making were excellent. You know, engineering and technology and all of that is a very creative field. And it's important to not take away from the value of the arts. And, you know, I think they spent so much time trying to pressure, you know, our nation's children to become technologists that now they have to pressure them to do art too.
Yeah.
You know?
And and that's something I just like, I'm sure, I mean, we're obviously all in agreement, like the arts are not lesser. I mean, they're not.
Absolutely
they're
not.
a wonderful part
they're
of life.
They're necessary.
Oh yeah. It's just part of living, in my opinion, living a fruitful life of being able to think and exist and be part of this world in a different manner that isn't certainly just logical and straightforward.
Yeah. And I mean, our lives would be so much different if we didn't have artists.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like I wouldn't have music on my phone. I wouldn't have art in my room. I wouldn't have, you know, there's art in everything. There's art even in like UX design, you know, things like that. There's a creative side of everything you do. all of our websites would be hideous if we didn't have artists.
Oh, that's true.
Oh, yeah.
We are not good at this. Somebody has to tell me how to make a website look better than I would naturally make it.
Oh yeah. And I think a big a message, I don't know, again, I don't speak for the entire podcast, but for myself is just like, we get told these things as children, and I was the same way in my environment, you know, like go STEM, that's all the money, that's what you got to do. But pushing everybody in the same direction is eventually going to oversaturate that. I mean, the same thing happened with lawyers. Everybody was pushing of like, again, I wish I had more facts, but from my understanding, a while back, the big push was like, you got to become a lawyer. We don't have lawyers. And then so many lawyers got into the field that there wasn't a whole lot of jobs for lawyers. And if anything to take away from this conversation is just pursue what you enjoy. I mean, Halle, you, again, start in chemistry, but you realize computer science is really what you enjoy. Like, do that. If you're coming into here, like, yes, you're going to have pressure from your family. And sometimes that can be extremely difficult to deal with. But at the end of the day, like, what you are passionate about is going to be the most important thing to do. It really is, because like I said, if everyone's in the same direction, if you follow everyone else, you can't really get anywhere because everyone's already there.
Yeah.
You got to do what you want.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I agree.
Do what you want as long as it doesn't hurt others. That's the little addendum to that.
Yeah. Also a good point.
You know, I never realized how right you are, though. At a young age, you know, we get told STEM. Recently, I was doing a project with my friends, right? And me being a senior, they're sophomores. I was just like, how can we make this more efficient? What can we do, right? And then some girl said, how can we make this more fun? And I just drew a blank. Like, I'm not fun anymore. I've been programmed to just be efficient, you know, just be perfect, not fun. Just crazy to think about.
Oh yeah. And those little reminders of like having that moment, I think are really important, because it is like, we need to get the job done. It needs to be efficient. Engineers, our job is to basically promote this world to become better and to become more advanced and more unified and all this kind of stuff. And that all isn't fun all the time. I mean, it's not going to be fun. Sometimes you know, there's tough decisions, there's things that have to be done, but keeping that thought, like, how do we make this fun, is a really important idea, because at the end of the day, when your job is over, you still have to enjoy yourself. You still have to enjoy what you are, what you're doing, and how you're living. And I don't know. I think that thought was great.
Yeah, absolutely. The ways you can make, or like, if you can find a way to make what you do fun, it won't feel like work.
Exactly.
That's a big thing.
So Halle, it's no secret that, you know, STEM is majority male. Mm-hmm. And when talking to my female friends in college or even high school, they always face like sexism. Being a minority, I know the struggles that we face, which is a sad reality, but is there something that you face, you know, in your undergrad, when you're working, or even in your master's, or does it die down eventually, you know? Yeah,
so I wouldn't say it dies down eventually. I will say, it, you know, everything in life, it ebbs and flows. And I can only speak to my own experience. I can't speak for anybody else. But really, undergrad, I had a really great experience in my department, the computer science department itself. While the faculty was majority male, we had one female professor on staff. You know, everybody was really great and supportive, and you know, I never felt any sort of discrimination in that sphere. I was a TA for 3 years in the computer science department, and nobody ever treated me differently as a female TA. Everybody really just wanted to learn and come for help, and all of the students and the faculty were really great about that. It not necessarily a negative experience, but just an experience I had is I actually was the treasurer and then the vice president of what we called the Software Engineering Club, which was actually a hybrid. We combined our ACM and IEEE chapters. So we have two individual, like we have an ACM chapter, like chartered and everything, and we have an IEEE chapter chartered, but they met at one time all of them, and we just called it Software Engineering Club, because I think that's sort of what our IEEE chapter was leaning towards. Like all the membership of that chapter was very like computer engineering and software engineering based. And so I was involved in that for several years of my undergrad. And I used to joke with my friends outside of the club, I called it Boys Club. I'm like, oh, I have a Boys Club meeting this evening. Because I was the only girl on the executive board, and generally I was the only girl that would show up to meetings. And, so it was always an interesting crowd to have, like, upwards of like 20 to 30 guys in a room sometimes. I'm just like, hello. Like, you actually have to listen to me. I'm in charge here. And again, because it pulled a lot of people from around the college, people that were in the computer science program, they were pretty familiar with me. I mean, it's a pretty small major at UM actually, for how popular computer science is as a program now, especially. It was actually, at least my time going through, was a very small program. I knew everybody in my year, and we all had classes together. Classes were like 25 kids, and so all those kids were cool, but I didn't know anybody in the engineering school. And so, they would come to meetings, they'd be like, who's this girl? Why is she talking to us? But generally there was never any like negative experience there. It was always just like, it was just a fact of the matter. I was going to Boys Club, and in a way, STEM is kind of Boys Club. Still to this day. I mean, they're introducing a lot of girls to the field. There are whole initiatives surrounding that. I mean, there's the SWE group, the Society of Women Engineers. There's all sorts of initiatives for girls to sort of come up and join this sort of movement towards technology, and the sort of surge. I'm sure you guys have seen it. There's a surge for computer engineering and software engineering and computer science. I feel like the major has grown exponentially in the past few years. And so I'm sure it's sort of slowly and steadily changing as they start normalizing women being in this field. But for now, it does sometimes feel like a boys' club in this sphere. And it's just a fact. It doesn't have to be something inhibitory, or you don't have to necessarily feel discrimination to feel that the fact exists. Mm-hmm. It's something that I deal with on a day-to-day. As a software engineer where I work, at no point ever do I ever feel discriminated against, or I feel like I'm less than because I'm a woman or because I'm young, or any factors that affect me. And again, I'm only speaking to my experience. But nearly all of my coworkers are male. I could count on one hand the number of women that I work with in a very large sphere of coworkers. And I'm not societally, systemically, that's an issue, yes. Yeah. But it's something that is being improved upon every day. I mean, with all of these pushes to sort of equalize, not just STEM fields, but really a lot of fields need to be equalized. I mean, you talk to a lot of women in just about any field, and they're like, oh yeah, this is a majority male field. This is a majority male field. You'll find very few areas that are majority female, and they're very, stereotypical things that have been designated as women jobs for years and years. But all of that is changing. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, you're all good. No, I obviously don't have a whole lot to add to this topic, so I'm taking my step back for this, but do you have any advice for any women coming up in the STEM field, whether they're just majoring now, whether they're looking for a job, anything you'd like to say or communicate?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple things that I'd like to say. Well, for one, regardless of if you're a female or really just any background, apply for what you want and go for it. There shouldn't be anything holding you back. The worst thing they can say is no. And, that's so important. Don't think like, oh, I shouldn't apply for Google's internship program because imposter syndrome. Really just go for what you want. The worst they can say is no. That's a big one. And looping back to that imposter syndrome, everybody has it. Everybody feels it. And I mean, as especially like I was saying a moment ago, you know, as a woman in an area where I'm not necessarily surrounded by other women, I can certainly feel imposter syndrome very regularly and very heavily, you know, in some instances. And it's just, you have to remind yourself, everybody has it. And the point that I made a while ago, everybody's Googling it. Like, I just have to remind myself pretty regularly, like if I have to Google something really dumb, like how to make a SQL update statement because I lost my brain that morning, like everybody Googles it, everybody. And that's okay. And that doesn't make you less than, it doesn't make you as smart. It doesn't make you not as smart as them. You're perfectly capable just because you had to Google something.
I think that's a wonderful message. And I will say a piece of advice from one of my favorite women, being my mom. She has always told me, and she being some odd years old, out of respect, not going to say, is the imposter syndrome doesn't really go away, but you have to apply for things. Even now, she's worked for like Brainstorm, Microsoft, for the government, for the Navy, doing these jobs that she, in her opinion, didn't feel like she was qualified to do. Like she was like, you know, this job seems out of reach, but I'm just going to go for it. And lo and behold, a week later, she's like, oh, I got the job. I'm like, yeah, like, of course you did. You're awesome at what you do. But the imposter syndrome just doesn't go away. And
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
what I have to say is wonderful.
Yeah.
And I just want to say to the viewers, you know, it may not be you, it could be a friend. If you see something, say something, obviously. Yeah. I know a lot of my friends, my girlfriends, they get like ridiculed for being a girl. Like, oh, you don't know this, you're a girl. Go back to the kitchen or something like that. Something's just sexist. And I don't get it. I really don't get it. You know, it's 2020, almost 2021. Just be there for other people. You don't have to be friends with them, just to be a jerk, be nice.
Respect people.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Only pass judgment on someone's personality.
Good message.
That's the only thing. That's it's okay. It's okay to not like people. Don't disrespect people.
Absolutely. And making jokes to someone else's detriment is never a good idea.
Oh no. Yeah. If you have to make fun of somebody to make a joke, you're not funny. Like that's just one of my least favorite thing are comedians who make money strictly based off of making fun of other people. Like if you can't come up with a joke without someone else being the punchline, you're not making, you're like, get better jokes. Hot takes for Brian tonight.
This is a clown.
It seems like we're getting to that time. Halle, it's been wonderful to have you on this podcast. Would you like to shout yourself out for a couple of seconds, couple minutes, last words?
Publications, LinkedIn's.
Oh my gosh. No, I mean, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. My name's Halle Fields. You can find me there. It's a unique enough first name. It'll be probably pretty easy to find me. I'd love to connect with anybody, hear messages, you know, that sort of thing. Thank you so much for having me. This was actually so much fun. It was really great talking to you guys. You guys are great.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much.